All right, so hi guys, how you doing?
Hi, good.
Very well. Good to see you.
Great, you too. So we're going to hang out a little bit today and talk about some helpful hints for the middle school as we start a transition to a one-to-one program. Why don't we start by having you introduce yourselves first and say a little bit about, your background with tech if you want to also. And Chris, we can start with you.
Christopher Clark. I'm a social studies teacher here at Licking Valley High School. I've been here 5 years, and I'm going to be teaching American History, AP, U.S. History, and an elective called Modern War this year.
Nice. And Brian?
Yeah, I'm Brian Ledford. I'm a math teacher here at the high school, and this will be the first year I'm not teaching Algebra 1, which was I've had freshmen up until this year. This year I'm just teaching Algebra 2 and money math. As far as the tech experience, I wouldn't say I have a lot of tech experience, but we have smart boards in the math classrooms, which is a little something different than some of the other teachers do. I know Chris doesn't, so I do have a little bit of experience with that. But other than that, we just kind of basic knowledge of what we've done so far.
Okay, great. I'll just start with the first question I have for you all, which is, as you reflect on the first year of the one-to-one program, is there something you wish you had known before going into it? And this could be something tech-related, it could be something just, philosophical. What do you wish you had known?
I wish I was more familiar with the Google Docs system and really all the Google products. It seems like our school is headed towards integrating more and more of the Google products, and it's not something that I had ever done before, and I still have limited experience with now. So if I had a year to do over again, I would definitely have dived into the Google products and the Google Doc type instruments more than I did.
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
Yeah, and I would just echo kind of definitely what Chris said. Having a good understanding of how to create a Google website and all those things helped. We kind of went into that and just did the best we could. And now that I know it, it's a little bit better. I'm going to go the other way and say something I wish I would have known before is the limited skills that 14 to 18-year-olds have as far as using computers for things other than social media. It was eye-opening to me, their lack of ability to do simple things like saving a document to a folder and then being able to find that document. They're really good at social media, but as far as word processing stuff and things like that, I was very shocked at their limited knowledge of how to do some of those things, especially when you're trying to connect it to cloud-based storage systems and things like that.
Right. I've heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah.
I've heard that from a lot of people. Do you think that, once the students became exposed to it more, that they learned it pretty quickly?
Some yes, some no. There were kids that picked it up right away, and there's kids as the year went on, I would tell them to save things to their desktop and go back to the desktop, and they couldn't find the file because they'd saved it in the wrong place. So just simple day-to-day usage of the software and the data. Some of them just really couldn't pick it up.
Wow, interesting. And we're talking high schoolers here even, right? We're going to be dealing with middle schoolers, so that's something to watch for sure and to plan for. That's a big part of it, is planning for it and knowing ahead what's going to be happening. Well, hey, can you tell us about a memorable lesson that you taught that integrated technology for learning? And this could be one that met your expectations or even exceeded them, or it could also be something that you thought was going to work and you were maybe disappointed but found a way to get around it.
For me, again, I have access to the smart board, so it was kind of nice. It gives you some different options. And so, I don't know if this is necessarily a lesson, but this was something that I was able to do. And then now that the kids had the netbooks, they could kind of do it on their own. like on days when I would know I was going to be gone, like when we have department meetings and things like that, I could record lessons on the smart board and then upload them to my website, which is where the kids went every day anyway. And then if they had their headphones, they could sit and listen to the lesson and follow along with it. And it was a video and an audio recording, and they could do it at their own pace on the day I was gone. So, normally that would have been a review day or something, that I would have had to have found for them just to do busy work. And this allowed me to kind of move on, and when I came back, then it gave us I didn't have to spend as much time as I normally would have getting them caught up because they already had the material there, and that helps. That helps too. I know Mr. Klaus, our calc teacher, he records all his lessons, and then that way, if those calc kids miss a day, that's a big deal. They can watch that, and they're responsible enough to watch it on their own. So that's been something that we've taken advantage of with the smart boards for sure. And there's ways to do it without a smart board as well.
Well, we do have smart boards at the middle school, which will be a big help. I love that you're thinking about, not just the fact that you can keep control over your classroom and you're not there, but the fact that it allows the students to work at their own pace.
Yeah.
It's perfect way to differentiate things for students. It's one of my favorite things about using technology.
Yep. And it increased the student responsibility, some of the safeties. For instance, they couldn't say they forgot their textbook because their textbook is on their laptop. And we all created class websites, whether we did it through Google Sites or through Edline, and so we would keep calendars and assignments were on there. I also started a Twitter account that could link directly to their smartphones and their devices, and I use that as a homework log. And every night I would put it on Edline, and I would put it on Twitter, updates of any assignments they have, and then the parents could link into that too. Some of the parents have trouble getting into Edline, but if the parent has a smartphone and can do Twitter, they can get an update directly from me that, hey, your child has homework tonight. They're supposed to read Chapter 5, Section 2 and take their notes on it. So that was a nice way to have redundant safeties, and the kids couldn't say they forgot this or they forgot that because they had access to it all the time.
That's great. Now, did the students respond pretty positively to you using Twitter? Did they like that?
Some did, and some
Some
didn't, but most did, and it caught on as the year went on. More and more kids subscribed and became followers.
Yeah, most of them use it, so whether they like it or not, it's there, and they're going to get it. So
right. And I'll bet part of that is the fact they can't use as an excuse, I didn't know where to find the homework.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all know where Twitter is.
Yeah.
Well, hey, since you brought it up, can you talk just quickly about Google Sites? Do you both use a Google site for assignments, and do you like it? How do you use it?
I actually use the Edline site still. I've got a Google site, but the Edline was very useful. It's it's pre-laid out for you. You just add the things in that you want. You can, I think, customize it to your own class.
Okay.
I use a Google website. The way I would describe it is it was a lot of work up front until you learn how to navigate through all that. But once I figured out what I wanted it to look like and figure out how to navigate it, I've been up here today, and I was able to kind of eliminate last year's stuff and kind of start over brand new with it in a matter of an hour. And I'm basically ready to go for this upcoming year. And it only took me about an hour to kind of, get updated with things. So so yeah, the Google sites, once you get over that initial hump, it worked really well for me.
With the Google sites too, I mean, you could make it as high tech and flashy as you want, or as simple as you want, which I think is useful. And
I just to maybe give a bit of advice, I think whenever I did it, I initially tried to get an old template, something that somebody had already done, and make it work for me. And what I found was it was easier for me just to start from scratch. And that might not work for everybody, but that worked best for me. When you're taking somebody else's, you have to do a lot of changing, and it it worked better whenever I scrapped that idea and just went from scratch and kind of made it my own way. So
it probably helped to look at the templates too, because you could see some, at least some designs that other people have
Right.
used. Right.
Yeah.
So what are there any other tools or websites that you two found yourself using once you were in a one-to-one environment that you really enjoy using?
The only other one that I use a little bit, it was a website that one of the other math teachers had found. It's called thatquiz.org, and it was a pretty good way for me to create some quick assessments. It had a lot of math symbols and things in a fairly easy way to use. But besides that, I live by the Smartboard software. You don't have to have a Smartboard to use the Smartboard software. And I personally, like, all my kids take their notes and do all their assignments on Smartboard software as opposed to doing it on Word or things like that. It's been a really nice way, because the best thing I like about it is you can manipulate, whether it's text or pictures or whatever, you can use it fairly easily to manipulate those things and kind of create it the way you want it. So I would recommend at least checking out Smartboard software, even if you don't have the Smartboard itself. So.
Okay. And Chris, what about you? Is there a favorite website or tool that you like to use?
Well, I'm big into Cornell Notes, being a history teacher. I like them to take notes out of the book, and then the lecture notes that I had accompanied the readings they're supposed to do. We had to go find an older version of the software to find this, and Mr. Klaus found it. But I was able to create PDF guided notes that the students could follow along with my lectures and fill in the blanks and save those, rather than have them follow on paper notes or try and write things down as I went. My notes were preloaded on my class website. They just had to open them up and type in the blanks as they followed the lecture. And I was able to put a lot of interactive maps and a lot of pictures into the notes that way. And there were actually hot links. They could click on pictures if they were interested. It would take them to a website where I brought it originally. So that gave them access to a lot of secondary sources that supported the content we're going over in class.
It did. It sounds like there are a lot of uses for that. I think that's great. I always think in terms of, like I say, differentiation is an important thing to me in terms of what technology can do to help us. And it sounds like when the students have the guided notes, they're ready to go. They can fill in the blanks, or if they're absent from class, they have an idea about what went on. The hot links are built in. I think that's fantastic. It's a great use for that.
And Mindy, I would just say too, this is going to kind of go back to something Chris was talking about earlier, but the more familiar your teachers can become with Twitter, it's a great way to communicate with kids because they all use it. And it's not something you're familiar with. Try and become familiar with it, because it really is a good, and you can communicate more than just what you want to tell them. You can post links on there, you can post pictures on there, and all day they'll find it. I mean, it's a pretty powerful communication tool. A lot of kids are kind of going away from Facebook and they're going more towards Twitter. So
yeah,
I would recommend at least looking into that as far as communicating with your kids goes.
And Twitter's not, difficult to use if you're just somebody who's going after information and not doing a lot of posting. So once you put the things on there for the students, it's easy for them to retrieve them, I think, even if they're younger, the middle school age set.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yep.
So what's the advice you have in terms of management of students? How do you keep them on task when they've got this lovely device in front of them? What are some things that have been done school-wide even to help with that?
I guess for me, we have some software called Mythware software, and it comes on all the kids' computers, and I didn't use it. I felt like we had a lot of issues with it, just to be honest about it. Part of the reason I didn't like it was we had to be logged into the student server as opposed to the staff server in order for it to work.
Okay.
It just wasn't real convenient for me to keep jumping back and forth between servers. I do a lot of walking around, I guess, when I teach anyway, so that's kind of how I monitor. I guess my thinking on it, we all have our own thoughts. Kids are going to pay attention whether they have some, the kids that want to pay attention are going to pay attention. The kids that don't, they're not going to. Before they just stared into space, now they stare at a screen. I never really saw it as being an additional distraction. I'm sure there are a select group of kids that maybe it was for, but those kids would have found something to distract themselves anyway, in my opinion. I found that the best way to monitor is just do it like we all try to, and that is walk around and monitor the old-fashioned way.
Sure.
I will say this, though, and Chris, you can talk about this maybe too, expand on it. I do know a lot of teachers that did use Mythware, and they loved it, and they thought it worked really well, and it really worked for them. So.
Yeah, I know Mr. Caton and I think Miss Prince used it a lot, and some of the others. I didn't use the Mythware so much either. One issue we had is kids wouldn't get logged out of another teacher's class, and they would get shut down by the other teacher because they thought that child was looking at something that they were looking at for my class. So it caused some early issues, and I never pursued it enough to work those out. But the teachers who use it love it. I'm another person. I move around the room all the time, so I'm walking up and down the aisles, and I'm looking at their screens. Another thing I did, and some other teachers have done, is we've moved our desks to the back of the room. So those rare times that we are behind our desk, we're behind the kids, and they're more likely to be on task. And I encourage the kids to sit close to the front of the room, which is good teaching practice anyways, and that makes it easier for me to walk around and monitor what's on their screen.
Did you use any kind of I'll say a keyword or phrase that let them know, shut the computers now, I'm going to speak for a bit? Is there a good management, method you have for that?
Simply screens down. That would just be a general announcement. If they were supposed to be off the computers and doing something else, I'd say screens down, please, and the kids would follow that pretty well. They understood that.
Okay. Okay.
And something that we kind of talked about before we came on air here was they'll find ways to use the computers to be with friends or leave class. And so, just one thing that we were talking about was they realized that if they came in and said that their computer was not charged, that would allow them to go sit near an outlet. And so those are things that you kind of have to think of. You have to come up with ways. They would intentionally, there are certain kids, I'm sure, that intentionally came to school with their computers not charged just for that purpose. And again, it's a few students, in each class, but those are the students that you generally don't want moving around a whole lot anyway. So, we came up with ways. I started running power strips up the aisles, so that made them stay in their seats. And just little stuff like that. The other thing we talked about was them using the computer as a reason to get out of class, saying their computer broke.
Right.
So they just, you would need to come up with a good system. I know our tech department has thought of some ways to maybe kind of limit that this year and come up with a better system for them going down to get their computer checked. So
you said they mentioned something about maybe even having a shared Google document that would just run all day, and then a teacher could check and see if that same student asked to leave the period before, so that teachers in each class period would know what the others had done and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like a restroom excuse. The same kids use the restroom all day long. The same kids' computers break all day long, and so it's just a matter of finding out who those kids are and communicating.
Now there are some students who I know would use an excuse like the teacher didn't teach me how to use this website or do this, that, or the other thing. How much do you as a teacher, how much time do you find that you spend teaching them how to use digital applications? Are they quick learners? Do you have to tell them a lot, or do they pick up by watching?
Some of them, it really becomes intuitive, and the kids that are the quick learners like that, use them for peer support. Those are a lot of the same kids that get recruited into the SWAT program, which is the student technical support. And so if you're not technically savvy, there's a lot of times kids you can tap into that can help. As far as teaching the kids how to use the software, that's like anything. I mentioned I use Cornell Notes. It takes me a day or two to teach the kids how to do Cornell Notes on paper with a writing tool. So any new software that you're going to teach that procedure the same way you would before you had computer technology. It's just a matter of teaching them the right procedures.
Yeah, the same thing for me with the smartboard. Not too many of them were used to using smartboard software, so we'll take a day, or not even a day. I mean, it would take 15 minutes just to teach them the basics, and then, like Chris said, the ones that are a little bit better at technical stuff, they'll find all the little intricacies out on their own, and as you go on, you realize, oh, I forgot to mention this, so you just mention it as you're going, and that's what I would say as far as that goes. Just like Chris said, you're teaching that. You used to teach that stuff anyway. It's now on a computer as opposed to on paper or whatever. So.
Right, but you probably both agree it's important that the teacher do take some time to make sure they know how to use it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, because like I said at the beginning, most of them don't.
Yeah, surprisingly. Are there some things that this year, you've thought about over the summer, even over last year, some new and different things you want to try this year with the, one-to-one aspect of things? Anything specific?
I guess for me, last year was just trying to keep our head above water, and so I did a lot of things last year that I would have done the year before. Just I did them on the computer as opposed to on paper. So I think this year, yeah, I mean, there's things that maybe I don't know that I want to do yet, but I definitely want to. Now that I kind of have my feet under me, I feel like I'm going to be able to explore some of those things a little bit easier. And so that would kind of be my answer to that. I off the top of my head, I wouldn't say that there's anything. Oh yeah, I definitely want to definitely do this. But I know there are options out there, and I think that's kind of where I would want to head with that.
And so first year is all about just like first year teaching anything, and this is almost like teaching, starting over again as a teacher to get comfortable and to feel a little bit more confident by the end of the year, hopefully, and then you can start adding some things. So. In other words, teachers who are doing this for the first time shouldn't be too hard on themselves that first year.
Yeah, like anything in life, you have to walk before you run, and you have to crawl before you walk. It takes a while to build up to it. And I don't know if you can always look forward and say, I'm definitely going to use this software this year, as much as you're looking and searching and always looking for new things to tweak. And you do that with your teaching methodology anyways. You're always looking for new things. So I don't have a great plan of using a particular software. I'm looking for more creative ways to teach, and when I can integrate technology to do that, I'm definitely going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the other thing that I learned was they now have access to information. And so as a teacher, I need to kind of change what I do from that aspect of I don't need to present them with as much information. I need to make them aware of the places that they can get the information, but then we're going to spend more time in class expanding on the information or, working. I see this year being a lot more work-oriented in class as opposed to me presenting information in class because they're going to have access to it. And, like I said, I don't know if there's a lot of tools out there, but like Chris said, that's more about teaching. That's not about the technology. You'll find the way to use technology in that way. But that would be the biggest thing that I took away from last year was just how class structure might be run a little bit differently. So.
It can't help but be, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Now, do you find that, you said the students, you're teaching them that they can be responsible for some of the learning on their own in terms of finding information. Do you find that the students who are able to do that now because they have a computer to call their own to do that with, do you find that they're a little bit more, confident in terms of what they think they're capable of doing as a student, as a learner?
The motivated kids, yes, and the less motivated kids, they tend to come up with the same types of excuses. So it varies from child to child and student to student. Kids are kids regardless of whether they have technology, and there's those that are motivated and engaged, and those that we're reaching out to try and help them get more motivated and more engaged.
Right, right. Hey, what advice do you have for all of us over here at the middle school? What should we focus on as we, prepare for our rollout next year? What's your advice? Help us out.
Don't hesitate. Don't be afraid of the technology. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to struggle. But reach out and try new things, because you'll never know if you don't try it.
Yep. And be aware that your kids might not know as much as you think they do. There's going to be days where the technology goes crazy and it doesn't work. Don't feel like you're a bad teacher because of that. Just run with it. The kids are amazingly understanding of days where that happens, and you'd be surprised at how willing they are to adapt with you. And don't be afraid to let the kids help you know something, because there are going to be kids in there that know how to get through it, and so don't be afraid to let that happen. And Chris hit the nail on the head earlier when he said, just because you have technology doesn't mean that you need to change the way you teach. Good teaching is still good teaching, whether they have a computer or not. So don't try and reinvent the wheel too much. Just be the good teacher that you are, and use the technology to enhance it.
Well, you guys are great, not just because you're sharing with us, but I love how you see where technology helps you, but like you say, it's just all about the teaching. Technology doesn't have to change everything. It can help, but it doesn't have to change everything when you're a teacher, or have you become a different teacher than you were before in ways that you don't want to. It's still great teaching.
Yeah, it's one more tool in your toolbox of teaching techniques, and it's a fantastic one that's going to keep growing, but it's only adding to what you're already doing. Absolutely.
Because it is just a tool. You still have learning goals that you want to reach, and the tool might help you to get there. Hey, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we stop hanging out for a bit? Anything that you think might benefit us to know?
I mean, I would just say, go into it with an open mind. Not everything's going to work. Some things will, some things won't. Don't be afraid to talk to your colleagues and see what they're doing. And like I said, I guess my only other advice would be, don't try and go too far into the deep end out of the gate. Try and get really good at a couple things that you feel confident with, and get your feet under you, and then once you start feeling comfortable, then maybe add one more. But don't try and change everything right away. Get comfortable with a couple things. Stick with it, even if it doesn't seem like it's working. Stick with it until you can get through it. And then if you want to change it at the end of the year, that's fine. But don't try too much too early. Get comfortable with what you want to know early on. So.
Yeah, I'll second what Brian said. That was perfect.
That is some excellent advice. Well, guys, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it a lot. We might come back and visit you later in the year and see how things are going. Maybe even have you come over and visit us at the middle school.
Okay, be glad to help.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Talk to you later. Thanks for hanging out.